Good morning. Welcome to Daybreak Live on Dominion Television. Ibadan, the ancient metropolitan city of hospitality. Today, the 24th of April, 2025. I am Samson Balogun.
And I am Uzom Sekechukwu. Good morning. Good morning, Samson.
Good morning to you.
How are you?
Well, I'm fine.
How is your Thursday going to be looking like?
Well, my Thursday is going to be eventful, actually.
Oh.
Yesterday was eventful. Today is going to be eventful. Friday is going to be eventful.
Okay, so that means it's party all through like...
Yeah, party after party.
Oh, wow. All right. Today we'll be beaming our light on the global world, going straight to the fact that WHO has announced its significant layoffs amid the U.S. funding cutoffs. Like it's something that we've seen. At least we saw that during it was January this year, yeah, when President Trump signed those executive orders saying they were withdrawing the U.S. from WHO, and we know that there are going to be significant consequences to this effect. And we also know that sometime during his first term, he wanted to actually wanted the U.S. to pull away from the WHO, accusing them of mismanaging and covering up the COVID-19 tracks.
Well, you are right. I think the United States have traditionally been, the major donors when it comes to funding of the World Health Organization and all the, health aids around the world. But the fact now is that if the U.S. is pulling out, the ripple effect is already showing.
Of course,
considering the fact that having heard that the World Health Organization have already decided that, look, if the U.S. is doing this, definitely we are going to cut down sizes.
Yes.
Probably lay some people off. And that's going to cost some people their jobs. Yeah. Meaning that the countries they belong to, wherever they come from, could be Nigeria, Canada, wherever, people who are going to get laid off, wherever they are from, that's going to be a huge economic consequences from that part of the country, the world. Then you want to take a critical look at why this is happening, and this can also be traced back to the fact that the tariff war, which is currently going on, I think the United States are trying to make a very strong statement at this time. Look,
at this time, yeah.
Then that brings us to African countries generally. Maybe some Asian countries and some South American countries too. Should countries who have enough resources to do most things rely heavily on the United States for funding, especially when it comes to the area of health? We all know that there are major crises that the world has faced in recent times, and then we realize the fact that the United States have been the ones that has actually supplied, given supplies to some countries, most especially when it comes to polio. We know that they have always been
smallpox,
smallpox, things like that.
Malaria.
There has been so
Ebola,
many campaigns which they have actually sponsored.
Measles, like all those things, and which brings us back to the fact that the WHO chairman Tedros actually said that it's time for them to actually help these countries not to be dependent anymore, but to be self-reliant. I think it's time actually, because we, as a country, Nigeria too, it's time for us to actually be self-reliant. We should be able to develop, we should be able to hold our country. We should not always be dependent on other people's aid. Now that the U.S. is pulling off, it's actually going to be a big blow to the country. Some persons are saying it's going to somehow result in another pandemic.
Yeah, let's take a look at the consequences. It's going to be less funding. Actually means there will be less support, less data sharing, slower response time when outbreaks happen.
Unemployment.
Which could, in turn, bring about a pandemic that might not really have things in place to make sure it is curbed at a time when it should be. And this is going to be a global issue.
Yeah, it's going to be a global issue.
If the U.S. is doing this at this time, I want to ask these questions. It has been running through my head for some time now, since the United States have actually been, been in support, doing the funding for some of these major campaigns. What were other countries doing, to prepare for a day like this?
I'd say that I think we're majorly relaxed because we're, it was something that was coming. Since after the World War II, when these countries decided to come together to have a stronger health background to help other countries that are struggling to have a level playground when it comes to health. Other countries decided to just relax because something is coming. They are always certain that there is something coming. Now that the US has decided to pull out, which I also think somehow is politically motivated. Because from what President Trump said, he said the US contributes about $500 million a year, whereas China, which according to him was the country that initiated or that started the COVID-19, and they hid it from the world, even when they were actually speculating that there's something coming up, they hid it from them. Their contribution is about $40 in a year, and $40 million in a year, sorry. And President Trump is saying if they are not going to be contributing as much as the US, why would the US be carrying the brunt when the Chinese have a bigger population? That's what this is all about. I feel like it's politically motivated because from the first tenure of President Trump, he had always wanted to actually pull away, especially during that COVID-19 crisis. He accused the WHO of being corrupt. Now that he's back on, he's making sure it is standing. And now the WHO is saying, if the US is pulling out, we can't actually continue like this, which is going to cause a lot.
Is the world even ready for a pandemic like the COVID-19, Lassa fever, without aid from the World Health Organization, without the funding of the United States of America? Will the world be able to stand on its feet at that time? These are major questions we'll be asking the people. You can join the conversation and drop your comment on our YouTube channel. It is at Dominion Broadcast. You can also do that on all other social media platforms at Dominion Broadcast on Facebook, on TikTok, and then you can also do that on Instagram. And on X, it is at Dominion Broadcast. You can drop your comment there, join the conversation. Is the world ready for a situation like this? If the United States decides to pull away, will the world be able to stand on its feet without having to rely solely on the United States of America? These are questions. Then we go to the fact that this is going to leave a very big gap. There is going to be a lacuna.
Of course, there is. It's
the United States
a big hole. The WHO have already said
instead of the United States pulling out completely, there are other giant countries in the world who can actually up their contribution to the World Health Organization and then make it even balanced. Take, for example, a country like Germany, the United Kingdom. These are countries that are also very, they can actually step up instead of pulling out as a threat by President Donald Trump of the United States of America. Why not have a roundtable discussion with other countries and say, look, we cannot come out with this amount of money anymore to support the World Health Organization? Why not come together and say, okay, let's all share this in a particular format? You
know, talking about that, the WHO chairman said it's a good thing that they were able to increase the fees they were paying, as that, you know, they do this biannually, and it's a good thing they were able to increase the fees of different countries that they contribute before the US decided to pull out. If not, it would have been worse than this, because if they had remained on what they were collecting before, it would have actually hit them real bad. Well, what we're talking about the world, see, is the world ready? Let's bring it down to us, Nigeria here. Are we ready? Looking at our health sector, looking at what has been happening, how health practitioners have been buying out of the country, and the state of our primary healthcare services, the state. Okay, now let's look at also the bill, the bill that was not the bill, the 2025 appropriation bill. Yes, how far? What exactly are we? How are we focusing on our health sector? What is the government or the government of the day actually doing to actually help boost our health sector better? Because this thing that is happening right now is going to fall back majorly on African countries that are, because we get so much aid from WHO, and WHO is saying it is time for these countries to be self-reliant, no longer dependent, because they have seen this. What happens when other countries start pulling out. And somehow WHO has to just go away.
I think
what is going to happen to Nigeria?
The Nigerian budget is overstretched. That when you look at what is allocated to health, you begin to wonder, are we even ready? Now, the United States of America has been the major financier of HIV/AIDS drug all over the world. If they pull out at this time, that's going to be a significant, blow to some people living with HIV/AIDS around the world. That
Of
is one,
course.
because the drug is expensive. If you are
Yeah.
not rich, you can't buy it on your own unless, you know, they give it to you based on the fact that you are on the roll. They know that you have it, and then they give it to you based on the fact that, you know, you are on the register. That is one. Two, they also support some other communicable diseases around the world. Polio is one of them.
Yeah.
These are things we should be looking at this time. Will a country like Nigeria, with the budget we have for health, which actually has affected the health sector, that most, as you said, rightly said, most competent health practitioners, they are leaving the country. Even the ones that just left the school, they are already jumping the ship. They want to leave the country at every opportunity they get. They are leaving. Now, if we get to this stage, this is a particular juncture that the country has to sit down and look at what they can do to be self-reliant. What will you do when the United States finally says, yes, this is the last time we are dropping a so amount of money for the World Health Organization, so amount of money for USAID, so amount of money for every agency that they have actually supported and funded in recent years. Now, the point is, will Nigeria as a country, because we've been talking about countries around the world, let's talk about the country Nigeria. Will Nigeria as a country be able to survive it? That's a question. That's maybe one of these days we'll speak with a health practitioner, or maybe the Minister of Health in Nigeria, or Minister of State for Health in Nigeria, on what exactly Nigeria is doing. Are we sitting and studying the situation as it is going, or we are already planning? Because it's one thing to be reactive, it's another thing to be proactive.
Of course.
If you are not proactive in a situation like this, which actually affects everyone, because health sector is one sector you cannot, overemphasize.
You can't.
Whatever amount of money you pump into that area, you know that you are going to get value for money. Take a critical look at the primary health centers we have in Nigeria. You can barely say they are in good state. Take a critical look at major health centers too. We have had fair share of issues in some major health centers. At the point, even the UCH Ibadan, at the point they said there was a protest that they said there was no water. At the point they said that not enough bed. These are issues. Don't forget, that is meant to be the capital, let me say, the place for health pilgrimage in Oyo State, or maybe southwestern states. But now, as it stands, with all the issues, even without the USA cutting funding, we have always had issues with health sector.
We have Nigeria. Always had issues.
Yes.
And I would always say, people would always say that until our leaders are ready to actually start making use of our health, of our hospitals, it is only then that they will understand that they actually need to work on our health sector. Because if they keep going outside the country to seek medical, if they keep going outside the country, they would actually understand what the ordinary Nigerians are actually going through or facing when they go to some of these health care centers.
Let me quickly chip something in there. When you look at how much is spent on medical pilgrimage around the world by probably people at the corridor of power, but, or even people who can just afford it, and then they feel like, oh, I want to go to maybe France, the United States, some go to Israel, some go to Arabian countries. I've seen someone said they went to Afghanistan for medical checkup. Some go to India. Now, the point is, if you go to all these countries, calculate how much it costs Nigeria for Nigerian people to go outside the country for medical checkup or maybe medical examination in a year. You understand the fact that if that money is retained in the Nigerian economy, it's going to be a huge boost. There are so many things we spend money on in Nigeria outside the country that people then forget that money is leaving the Nigerian economy, is not coming back.
The thing is, we feel like we're already used to that kind of lifestyle in Nigeria. But anyway, this is it for this segment right now. We're heading straight to our news desk. Sarah Wane is waiting for us to give us the news. Stay tuned.
Good morning. This is Daybreak News on Dominion Television. My name is Sarah Uwane. The Minister of Education, Dr. Maruf Alausa, has announced the release of 50 billion naira by the federal government to the academic and non-academic staff unions of the Federal University for the settlement of earned allowances, as promised by President Bola Tinubu. This development was disclosed in a statement issued by the Director of Press at the Federal Ministry of Education, Folashade Boriowo. According to the minister, the intervention is not just a financial transaction, but a reaffirmation of the president's belief in the capacity of Nigerian youth and the invaluable role that academic and non-academic staff play in nurturing them. The Inspector General of Police, Kayode Egbetokun, has ordered all police mobile force squadrons across the country to maintain at least one fully equipped combat-ready unit on constant standby. The directive was issued during a meeting with squadron commanders in Abuja, following a surge in violent attack by bandits that claimed lives in Kwara, Benue, and Sokoto State. In recent weeks, a wave of violence has swept through several states, including Plateau, Benue, and Enugu, with multiple attacks reported on unarmed and defenseless civilians. The police chief's directive is part of a broader strategy aimed at curbing escalating insecurity and ensuring a rapid response to any emerging threat nationwide. Meanwhile, reactions have trailed the ambition of Oyo State Governor Seyi Makinde to run for the seat of president come 2027. A member of the All Progress Congress in Oyo State, Honorable Olushola Agbegunde, while discussing governance in Oyo State on live program The Agenda on Dominion Television, described Governor Seyi Makinde's ambition as unrealistic.
Questions on the agenda, Olushola Agbegunde and public affairs analyst John Uzuchukwu x-rays governance in Oyo State under the Seyi Makinde's led administration.
Oyo State, and I will look at what the Governor Makinde promised prior to 2019. Governor Makinde promised that he was going to invest in agriculture to the extent that we will be exporting maize to Botswana. At any rate, I had issue with that because I was looking at what is the strength of the Botswana currency against what we have in Nigeria. But he made so much promises regarding agriculture. Today, Oyo State government does not own an acre of land. Despite Fashola,
yes,
Oyo State still relies on the north for the supply of pepper.
Well,
I'm coming. I'm coming.
Okay.
Pepper,
yes,
tomatoes, onions, melon, watermelon,
even beans,
even rice.
Okay.
So now, see, let me tell you something. Don't tell me.
Are you saying Fashola Farm Settlement was revived for croonings? Is that what you're saying?
You go there.
No, is that what you're saying?
No, you go there and take a stock of the farmers there. Are they locals or foreigners? And whatever they are planting there, which market are they selling it? What control does the governor have over it? Akala did not borrow billions on agriculture now. He spent whatever he had. Makinde has borrowed billions. One has borrowed as much as Governor Makinde with respect to agriculture and is planting nothing.
State should not be sourcing for food anywhere.
Okay.
Because one would expect that he's coming from the private sector. He understands what business is. He's an accomplished businessman. So one would expect that the moment he came into office, agriculture, which is one of the cardinal points or pivotal point he want to drive and achieve, should have been invested in. The governor is repairing roads that are already okay. If you are looking at Bodija, UI Road to Ojo, those roads are good. There are several road networks in local communities in Thailand that are not done.
In a swift reaction, the acting publicity secretary of the People's Democratic Party in Oyo State, Michael Ogunshino, described the claims as baseless.
And that's the best way to describe what Mr. Shola Abegunde has come out to say. It has no solid base. It is not true. It is, and I find it rather appalling that somebody will come out today in Oyo State and say that Seyi Makinde hasn't done anything in agriculture. I find it rather appalling. I find it rather very disturbing that a man of his caliber, a man of his age, a man of his intellect, a man that is that exposed will come out to say that they've not been able to see what Governor Seyi Makinde has done.
Michael Ogunshino speaking there. Grace Aino, Dominion News.
Niger State Governor Umar Bago has reversed his controversial directive ordering the arrest of individuals with dreadlocks. Following widespread backlash from the public and civil rights advocates, the governor had earlier instructed security agencies to arrest anyone seen with dreadlocks across the state, linking the hairstyle to rising court-related activities and insecurity, particularly in Minna, the state capital.
We read the Riot Act on hooliganism, and people misconstrued our words for people who have dreadlocks. We don't have problem with dreadlocks, but we have problem with the cult here with dreadlocks. So if you have dreadlocks and you have business, please come to Niger State. All that is a media propaganda. We are not driving dreadlocks from Niger State. We are only driving that cult that is becoming a menace in Niger State. Thank you.
In addition to the dreadlocks directive, Bargo also announced a 12-hour daily restriction on commercial motorcycles and tricycles, banning their operation from 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. as a border crackdown on violent crimes. And now in business, the Bola Ahmed Tinubu International Airport in Minna, Niger State, has officially been designated as the alternative airport to the Nnamdi Azikiwe International Airport in Abuja. This announcement was made by the Minister of Aviation and Aerospace Development, Festus Keyamo, during the launch of Overland Airways commercial flight operation from Minna Airport. Highlighting the airport's capacity and strategic relevance, Keyamo praised the facility's infrastructure and its potential to serve as a major aviation hub. He emphasized that the airport meets international standards both in physical and operational aspects and expressed surprise at its previous underuse. And now talking sports, Nigeria's Flying Eagles have recorded a 2-1 win over Egypt's Young Pharaohs in an international friendly at the Cairo International Stadium as both teams finalized preparation for the 2025 Under-20 African Cup of Nations. Forward Parebo Arieri, who starred in Nigeria's successful WAFUB title defense in October, opened the scoring in the 10th minute after a well-weighed pass from Bidemi Amole. The Young Pharaohs responded midway through the second half through Ahmed Kabaka, who capitalized on a rare lapse in Nigeria's defense to draw the host level in 65th minute. However, Nigeria restored their lead in 8th minute when Precious Benjamin calmly converted a penalty following a foul on Divine Olise inside the box. You can visit us on our website on www.dominion.org.ng to listen to us live and interact with us. You can also follow us across our social media platforms on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn at Dominion Broadcast, and on X at Dominion Cast. That ends Daybreak News. My name is Sarah Owane.
All right, welcome back from that short break. That was Daybreak News live with Sarah Nwanne this morning. The show is still Daybreak Live on Dominion Television, your channel of choice. Don't forget you can be a part of the conversation by joining us on all our social media platforms. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel and watch us live at Dominion Broadcast. Link up with us on all other social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. It is at Dominion Broadcast, and on X at Dominion Cast. You can also watch us live on our website at dominion.org.ng. The show continues, and we go straight to the newspaper review segments this morning, where we'll bring you the major stories on the pages of the newspaper, and after that we'll delve straight into analysis. We'll bring you traffic reports and then to sports this morning. And we start with the Leadership newspaper as the major story on the Leadership newspaper this morning. Ahead of 2027, PDP suffers big blow as APC captures Delta. That story is on page 4, and the riders on that story is the governor of Delta State, Governor Sheriff, then his predecessor Okowa. Others join ruling party. Governor orders collapse of all political structures into APC. Shetima, Ganduje to receive defectors on Monday. That story is on the Leadership newspaper this morning. This is a huge blow to Delta and PDP right now.
Right, like it's a whole lot, you know. I when we talk about politics, it's something that I usually say is in politics. You can't say this person is permanently here, that is a permanent friend, that is a permanent enemy. They're always aligning and realigning and aligning just to suit them. That's actually the truth, because ahead of 2027, this is 2025, we're already seeing people defecting and different coalitions and all the rest. Well, it's a big blow for the PDP, but we move on. Now,
you can imagine, since the return of the president from his working leave outside the country, in France, then the United Kingdom, there has been a series of defection into the party. And most notably, that happened yesterday when, you know, former governor of Delta State, Okowa, and his successor, Sheriff, and then every, you know, structure of the PDP in that state collapsed into the APC. That
right,
is
like it's
that's
the
a
whole
very strong
state.
statement. That's the whole state.
Right, like they have literally carried the whole state. And then people are also speculating about the meeting Governor Sim Fubara had with the president, that probably he's going to be, you know.
There are rumors that it is not just going to be Delta states. There are other states who are willing, we are ready to join the APC.
Join the
now,
ruling party.
While the president was away, there were a lot of issues as regards, okay, who is going to which party to form an alliance against the president ahead of the 2027 general election. While they were doing that, I guess the president was also doing his assignment. Look, if you are doing people who are outside, you know, office as we speak, who do not have a portfolio, I am doing people who are democratically elected, and they are still political, you know, functionaries within, you know, Nigeria. Now, that is one big news from Delta State for the APC.
Which brings us back to the fact that some persons have been asking, are we gradually drifting into a one-party system? Because it's something that we're actually seeing sort of recently. The way it's looking like, it's going to be like in like 20 years back when PDP was a sole party. Yeah, where you know that nothing goes, it's always PDP. The other parties then were regional parties. Some, you know, like the ACN was in the southwest then. So the CPC had some states in Abga too, like in the southeast. Gradually, we're almost seeing the same thing about to happen right now, because it seems like the APC is about to be another one party, you know. Well, until then, we shall see. We'll move on from there. Yeah, moving to insecurity. We have Tinubu issues fresh orders, says enough is enough. This is on page 7 of the Leadership newspaper. All right, away from there, this morning, 29 states default in contributory pensions. That story is on page 17. Should this story be a thing we should be reading? Because anyone who serves the government, works as a civil servant for a particular number of years, I think what the only benefit they get from the government is the pension, then the gratuity, and that's all. You don't get anything from the government. It means you are out of the system. Yeah. And if they are still having issues with what should be their emolument after service, I think it's not good enough. It's always about the economy. We are not ready. It's about our leaders. We are actually not ready to make things right. If we're ready, because if you look at the way our leaders prioritize their welfare, if they can prioritize the welfare of ordinary Nigerians like that, we're actually going to go a big.
Have you heard how much some people get as pensions?
Oh, I wouldn't want to.
There was a time
it.
I heard someone said you get 5,000 naira.
And I'm like, how can 5,000 do for you?
That?
In this time and age,
if there's an
imagine
increase
that person doesn't have
on an existing salary, if you are still in service, and there is always an increase when a new negotiation was made by the labor to get more for the people, just like the last 70,000 minimum wage. I think that should also be applied. Should reflect on, even if it is not 100%, at least something should, it should show somewhere, maybe a 45–50%, increase. Away from there, we take another story this morning. Zoms.
Okay, we have members hold parallel sittings as crisis rocks Zamfara Assembly. Okay. This is also politics.
That's politics too. Away from there, this morning, we think IMF projects 45.4% debt to GDP for Nigeria by 2030. The last few days, as you know, they have been really hurtful to the Nigerian economy. Well, some papers have reported it as it is, but some have actually, found a way to make it a soft news. But then, this is not soft. It's a major news for the Nigerian economy. And that's combined with the tariff increase and every other thing happening around the world. I think the Nigerian government should really sit tight at this time. Yeah,
they should really sit tight, which brings us back to the fact where we're asking, is there really a light at the end of this tunnel? Because it feels like when we're trying to get hold of this other shoe, the other one drops. Yeah. So let's just, well, it's actually something we're looking forward to. We're looking at the fact that, okay, if some things, we are seeing a little bit of progress, we're saying it's baby steps. We're taking baby steps. Well, let's just be hopeful that at the end, we're going to have an adult.
For how long we'll do the baby steps? Away from there, let's take another story this morning. 2025 Hajj may face operational issues. That's on page 7 of the leadership newspaper this morning.
And we have Asian Mediterranean refineries, major beneficiaries of Nigerian crude shipments in April.
Okay. All right. Away from there, we go to the Blueprint newspaper. And on the upper third of the Blueprint newspaper this morning, we have this story. Minna Airport's inaugural flight lands in Abuja, FG, Niger Eye Agro Hub. That story is on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper.
And we have halt current violent trends. Tinubu orders security chiefs. I think this is a result of the meeting, the closed-door meeting they had yesterday. We'll keep saying this. We don't need much of these talks. That if someone is not doing his or her a job, let heads roll.
Be fired.
Yes.
Let such person be fired. I think in Sena claims, if you are not doing your job and there are complaints on what you do, most of the times you get to resign.
Of course,
if there are too many complaints, means you are not capable of doing it. You can't carry out the responsibilities given to you. You walk away. You resign. Maybe next time when you are given another assignment different, maybe you will be able to do better. And that brings us to how we put people in positions in Nigeria. Yeah. Putting square pegs in round holes has always been a problem. You see, a person who actually, graduated with flying colors in accounting knows so much about the Nigerian economy and then ends up in the Ministry of Power. And then you have other people, different areas like that. You will begin to wonder, this person is a barrister at law. Why Ministry of Education? Why not somewhere you will understand?
Where he has his knowledge, the basic knowledge and everything. Which also, aside that, talking about resignation of these people, if you know you're not capable, what is our National Assembly doing? Because they have been charged with
they have oversight functions to check. Are you really doing this job? But it feels like we are all playing friends in this country because people are looking at. Have you seen videos of where ministers are screened in Nigeria? You will come and you say so by the name, take a bow and leave. And that's it. And that's a screening. Yeah. Sometimes when the National Assembly actually calls these people for them to come up to answer some questions, sometimes they don't turn up. And sometimes there are even no excuses. Maybe after like
2 or 3 times when they've been called. You now hear the person was sick or outside the country and this. We're not serious in this country. We need to start being serious in this country. That's just
Do they even know
truth.
what portfolio they will be getting immediately they get nominated? I don't think so. I think nomination should come based on, okay, we need someone for science and technology, then we look for someone that knows about science and technology
that has an in-depth knowledge.
But in Nigeria, we nominate and then we start fixing them into portfolios, and that should stop.
In Nigeria, you're even talking about nomination. In Nigeria, we do the thing where, you know, I know you, you know me. You just appoint, and then they cover it up with the word, with the phrase nomination.
Away from there, we take another story this morning. Sheriff Okowa orders defects to APC compound PDP's woes. We won't remain in a boat already capsizing. That's coming from manager. Delta governor protected under the current law. That's coming from a son there. All right, away from there, this morning we'll take another story.
We have Minna Airport inaugural flight lands in Abuja. Federal government, Niger Agro Hub.
Okay, and then Plateau killings, Mutuanga FFK at war over Israeli envoy's visit. You'll find that story on the Blueprint newspaper this morning.
And we have federal government biggest beneficiary of 2024 banking industry boom report.
And then FG releases 50 billion naira to settle ASU other varsity staff allowance. It's on page 7 of the Blueprint newspaper.
It's been a long time coming.
Let's see what happens there.
Right.
Then let me remind you that the defection in Delta State comes exactly 1 week after Governor Eno of Akwa Ibom State publicly endorsed President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, saying, look, we are with you on this one.
Well, politics, I don't really like to give myself stress about politics.
2027 is almost here.
Almost here?
Almost here.
In politics, it's almost here, right?
Away from there, let's take days on page 19 of the Blueprint newspaper this morning. FG's biggest beneficiary of 2024 banking industry boom. That's your reports there. And then contract discrepancy. Wike summons AICL, FCDA over ICC rehabilitation. It's on page 6 of the Blueprint newspaper this morning.
And also on page 6, we have 2 factions emerge in Zamfara Assembly over security report.
All right, takes us to the Nigerian Tribune this morning, and we'll take this particular story. NLC tackles power minister on claims of adequate electricity supply to 150 million Nigerians. How do they get to calculate these figures? How do they get these figures, actually? Because I don't think that will sit well with Nigerians out there, especially when you go to the heart of Ibadan and ask questions. Are you having constant electricity just like this? At least the budget, the idea is that we are over 200 million Nigerians. Let's peg it at 250 million Nigerians, meaning that more than half of Nigerians are having constant electricity. Now, we should be able to check half of Ibadan and say, oh, are you having constant electricity? Because I do not have the electricity he's talking about.
And, you know, I like the fact that you asked the question, how did they get these statistics? Because just giving us random news, you know, I always say it in this country that in Nigeria, we are always told about what is happening in the country. We don't feel it. We are seeing 150 Nigerians, 150 million Nigerians. How? Are you feeling it?
Well, that takes us to what the MBS also says about inflation in Nigeria. You see figures drastically reducing and you begin to wonder. It has no effect on what I buy in the market. It has no effect.
You go to the market, it's increasing. What you bought the previous day has increased maybe by 100 naira, 200 naira.
Maybe we should do better with our stats in Nigeria. Away from there.
We have the major story on the Nigerian Tribune, which has been on probably all the newspapers this morning. We have why we joined APC, Delta Governor Okowa orders. And the writers there we have explain how Ibadan PDP governors meeting aided exit. Senator Kawu dumps NNPP for APC in Kano. Edo LP Senator Imashun set to defect to APC. 6th-term Osun federal lawmaker quits PDP. Okay.
That was also a major story in Osun State yesterday. He's a sitting rep. He has been there, I think, 6 times. And then now he's out of PDP, heading straight to the APC. That's, it's been an era of defection as we speak. Let's see what happens. And then we go straight to page 5 of the Nigerian Tribune. Chief of Army Staff orders troops to clear Kwara, Niger of bandits in 1 month. That story is on page 5. This is good news for the people of Niger, for the people of Kwara, because the boundary between these two states has been a major place for bandits in recent times. There were news yesterday that places like Barutain, which actually happens to be a border town between these two states, has been, under attack for some time. And now the Chief of Army Staff has come to say, look, I do not want one bandit in that area in the next 2 months.
Well, we're looking forward to that actually being implemented and, sustained. Moving on, we have Pencom recovers 1.58 billion naira from defaulting employers as pension assets hit 23 trillion naira.
All right, another 2 killed, over 20 farms destroyed by bandits in Plateau State. That's on page 4. I think it's becoming a daily thing to report stories from Plateau State now. That the federal government should really do something and look into it. That declaration by the Chief of Army Staff to look into banditry in Kwara and Niger, I think that same thing should be done in Plateau and Benue State as we speak. It is becoming alarming that even when you get to open pages of the newspaper, you already know what you are expecting to see there. And that should be, taken into consideration for the fact that one life is important. How much more of 20?
One life is important, very important. If you cannot give life, why take it? Moving on, we have ahead of burial, thousands queue to catch glimpse of Pope Francis's body. Okay.
And then we'll take this story on page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune. Why we will back Tinubu CPC block. That statement is credited to the CPC in Nigeria at this time. You find that story on page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning.
And on page 6, we have flight operations disrupted as NIMET workers down tools. And the writer there, we have Air Peace suspends flight. That is on page 6 of the Nigerian Tribune.
All right, earned allowances. FG releases 50 billion naira to ASU, other unions. It's on page 4 of the Nigerian Tribune this morning, just as reported on other papers.
Yeah, course, Niger of bandits in 1 month. That's what we mean.
All right.
Talking about that, the service chiefs, yeah.
Ahead of burial, thousands queue to catch a glimpse of Pope Francis' body. It's on page 19 of the Nigerian Tribune, and then that takes us to the Guardian newspaper this morning. Others for opposition parties as APC wins more governors. Others. That's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper.
And you can see the picture. Simfura is already part of.
It's already part of, Okowa is there, Abdullah Ganduje is there, and the governor sheriff of Delta State is already in the picture. They keep gathering the names they think will pull weight ahead of the next election.
Wow, 2027. Okay, moving on, we have ECOWAS to relocate institutions from Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger. This can be found on page 2 of the Guardian newspaper. Well,
I think it's been a long time coming. Remember, these states are being governed by the junta, the military, meaning that as of now, some of them are saying they are no longer part of the ECOWAS. They have decided to form a block of their own. Yeah, so meaning that ECOWAS is no longer functioning in that part, and all they have to do is to pull out. Yeah. Away from there, we take another story this morning. Insecurity, Tinubu security chiefs in talks. 36 governors discuss crisis in Abuja. That's on page 6 of the Guardian newspaper.
And to health, we have WHO to downsize operations amid further funding. Major funding cuts. That's actually what we talked about when we signed in this morning, talking about the WHO and how the U.S. pulling out is going to affect
the world,
developing countries, most especially the African countries, and how is Nigeria ready? How are we preparing for this? Because it's going to be a big hole that's going to be left in the Nigerian economy. Yeah. So how are we ready to fill up this space to be able to make life easier for Nigerians? We already know how tough it is right now, but at least some part of it, Nigerians have been able to have a grip on some of these things, like you said, the drugs that we get HIV and AIDS,
polio,
so
vaccines.
It's a whole lot, yes.
Whole lot.
Imagine the kind of pandemic we had and during the COVID-19 and the
funding
US
is
was not
there,
part of it.
wow.
Imagine what will happen right
That
now.
would
So
be
we
a
need to be
major disaster.
ready. How ready are we?
All right, away from there, let's take this story. It has been on the papers for the last few days, and then that has a lot to do with the solar panels to be installed at the Aso Rock. And then they say 10 billion naira Aso Rock solar project, an admission of power sector failure, says Uriwa. That story is on page 20 of the Guardian newspaper. I think for me, if you ask me this question, that's exactly what I would say. That would be my opinion. If the Aso Rock intends to look for alternative source of power, leaving Nigerians in the cold, thinking, well, let's just do this. 10 billion naira for that, project is a huge admission. That look, we know that power is bad in Nigeria. Let's just look for alternative source of power for Aso Rock. That means that there's a chance the Aso Rock is pulled out of the national grid. If they are no longer on the grid, what happens to a common man on the street?
Really?
What happens to a dry cleaner who needs electricity for his business? What happens to an electronic repairer who cannot do anything without electricity? What happens to a welder on the street who does not, who cannot afford the price of diesel as we speak and needs electricity? These are questions that the government must answer. You can't just provide, a source of power for yourself and then leave Nigerians out in the cold. It is not done.
Which is what we're still asking. Are you actually feeling what we are feeling? You're saying that we are actually experiencing that we should be patient, that it takes time. We know it takes time, for something to be refined into something beautiful. You have to go through fire. But this fire is actually burning us. And how are we going to come out of this?
If Nigerians should be patient, I think we should all be patient.
We should
people in power should also be patient.
Our leaders, the
ordinary Nigerians, we should all bear the brunt of what is happening, and no one should be left out.
That's the point. We should all bear the brunt, not telling us to be patient, whereas you're living a luxurious life and living life to the fullest, and the common man who actually voted you into power is actually suffering.
That reminds me of, during the administration of President Goodluck Ebele Jonathan, there was a particular proposition then, which eventually became an act that they call it austerity measures. Okay, so you pay more for expensive things because they are not basic items. Let's say exotic drinks and the likes. So you pay more for that, but the basic things should be affordable to a common man.
Should be affordable. Food.
If you ask questions from an average Nigerian man, you realize the fact that they don't need too much. They just want to survive.
They just want to survive.
They want to have basic needs.
Do you know that
provide water, provide electricity, provide good roads. These are things they are looking for, and they are not there. They are not physically there. Look at Nigerian roads now. If you are traveling, you
can spend hours on the road for some. If it's a journey of 2 hours, you might spend 5 hours.
There are roads that are getting busier. The government should be thinking of alternative routes for these places,
right?
Especially the Lagos-Ibadan Expressway. What other places roads can you follow to Lagos without following the main express road? There's not.
There are some communities, as we are speaking right now, that don't even have access to good water.
And that's a major problem.
Yes.
Now, every Nigerian, they are providing what the government should provide. You see an average home, they are already providing borehole for themselves. They have water. An average Nigerian has a generator or probably solar panel somewhere that provides electricity. That should be the job of the Nigerian government to do. And some people are always looking for ways to make sure, okay, security, there are eye fences everywhere. They have their own gatesman.
Private security agencies.
Private security. It means that the Nigerian government has failed in some areas. And it has to be done. Someone has to talk about this and then be factual with it. But then you have to be constructive. And that's exactly why we do this. Once in a while, we'll talk about this. Let's go to another story this morning.
And we've been unfairly blamed for insecurity in Imo. IPOB laments.
Okay, scandals. President won't allow Akpabio to step aside, says senators. That's on page 3 of the Guardian newspaper this morning. There has been calls for the Senate President, Senator Godswill Akpabio, to step aside amid the crisis, the whole brouhaha that actually has a lot to do with Senator Natasha Akpoti-Uduaghan. It's been, a back and forth, and then there are also accusations on the part of former governor of that state, Kogi State, former governor Yaya Bello, to being complicit to what happened in Kogi State. But all in all, if the senators are coming that they are not even saying we senators, will not allow Senator Godswill Akpabio to step aside. They are saying the president will not allow Senator Godswill Akpabio to step aside. I mean, that something is happening in that corner. And then
there's always a political
undertone to everything.
Right.
That's what takes us away from the Guardian newspaper this morning. We're straight to the New Telegraph, and we'll be taking the story. Insecurity. Enough is enough. I want results. Tinubu tells security intelligence chiefs. That's on page 2 and page 4 of the New Telegraph this morning. And then we take the rider. He directs them to work closely with local authorities. And then we can't watch helplessly while our people are slaughtered, says Tortiv, that's the king there, as Alia, Autumn, Suswan, elder statesmen meet with monarch over insecurity. Those are 3 powerful men in Benue State. They are former governors. And then others in hundreds invading ill-equipped Benue villages. That's coming from the governor. This is one thing. We talked about porosity of our borders. And then the people also have to be the whistleblowers. When you see people that are not, members of your community and they suddenly appear, you say something. Call the attention of the security agencies. At least you cannot do that once, twice, and thrice, and then they will not take note of what you are doing. And then it will not be just one person. Everyone should talk. Because eventually, you will be the one to suffer the consequences. The people are dying. Farms are being destroyed. These are questions the government must answer.
Questions the government must answer. I like that last line. Moving on, we have NLC to Adelabu. Millions of Nigerians forced to choose between food, electricity, bills. Okay.
All right, we take this story
that
from
is really true.
To Zamfara this morning. Parallel assembly emerges as governor to represent, Zamfara. Parallel assembly emerges. Ask governor to represent 2025 budget. That's on page 7 of the New Telegraph this morning. I hope that is not a repeat of what happened in River State, where we had the Martin Amewule-led assembly and the 27 lawmakers, and then we had, a 4-member assembly who received the budget and passed the budget. 4 members. I mean, that's serious warning coming from Nigeria.
Politics. I keep saying
politics,
that.
All right.
Obi in Vatican says Pope Francis left legacy of light as thousands queue to see popes lying in state. Okay,
still this story, which is reported on all major newspapers this morning. Defections, Sheriff, Okowa, others collapse Delta PDP structure into APC. Osun Rep member resigns from PDP. APC using state instruments to coerce PDP governors. That's coming from Bode George. Is that a credible statement?
That cannot be a credible statement. I mean, they all have minds of their own.
So
you can't say they are coercing them.
These are governors.
If you don't want to do it, you
don't want to be
a
part of a political party. I mean, there's a free will to say, no, please, I'm not joining your political party. Or maybe, just like we have seen in recent past, a sitting governor can say, look, I'm going to support you, but that does not mean I'm coming to your political party. I think that is fair enough. But then to say they are being coerced into doing something, they are all getting allocations as at when due. So that is not coercion for me. Because in the past, we have seen cases where, sitting president would want to say, look, if you are not doing this, you are not getting your state allocation. That was in the past. But now, everyone gets their allocation, whether you belong to Party A, Party B, or Party C. All you have to do is to make sure that your people are living in good conditions. So, that's it.
Well, we can never have enough of politics. Moving on, we have 501 visually impaired candidates to take 2025 UTME. That's on page 30 of the New Telegraph.
All right, we take this one. DMO to reopen 350 billion naira FGN's bond auction. You'll find that story on the upper third of the New Telegraph this morning. And
moving to America. Judge halts Trump's shutdown of Voice of America. That's on page 4. Okay. All right, so we'll take this one. Global uncertainty. Nigeria must streamline public spending. That's coming from IMF. Now, I want to say this very quickly before we leave this paper this morning. Oftentimes, we get advices from the IMF. They tell countries on what to do, their monetary policies, and how to go about it, how to borrow, and how not to do. Has it really affected the Nigerian economy positively?
Because you will understand the fact that there was a time I read something about the IMF saying something to the Nigerian president, and then in the long term they said that wasn't what exactly they meant. And they meant a different thing. Meaning that, they can't be right at all times. I think we should have a mind of our own now and do our things our own way. Some of the countries who have decided to do their things their own way, I think to some extent they have gotten it right.
They're going forward. I was going to say what you just said, that I think it's time for us to actually sit up, to be able to take independent decisions. We're still saying it. This WHO is more like an eye-opener. This US pulling out of WHO is more like an eye-opener. So Nigeria, our leaders should actually be ready. They should sit up and look out for things to be able to stand on their own, not always dependent on different aids and all the rest. So let's just be dependent, not always listening to.
All right, let me take the sporting story. This morning, then, match fixing will attract 10-year ban, NFF warns. You'll find that story on page 32 of the Blueprint newspaper. And that brings us to the end of the newspaper review segment this morning. Don't forget, this is the station where we bring you unbiased analysis and, of course, undiluted reportage. The show is still Daybreak Live on Dominion Television, located in the heart of Ibadan, the ancient metropolitan city of hospitality. You can join this conversation by dropping your comments on our YouTube channel. The comment section is open at Dominion Broadcast. You can also link up with us on all other social media platforms, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok at Dominion Broadcast, and on X at Dominion Cast. Don't forget, you can also watch us live on our website at dominion.org.ng. We go on a short break, and when we return, we'll delve straight into analysis this morning. We'll be back after this time out. All right, welcome back from that short break. The show is still Daybreak Live on Dominion Television, where we bring you unbiased analysis and, of course, undiluted reportage. Thank you for being a part of this show so far. We now head straight to our analysis segment, where we'll bring you the analysis for today's show. We have with us in the studio Seun Oluwole, who is an aviation instructor, and of course, he is also a public affairs analyst. Good morning to you, Seun Oluwole.
Good morning.
Good to have you in the studio with us this morning.
Good morning. Nice to have you. Nice to have me too.
So we've been talking about the World Health Organization. We've been talking about the funding and aids countries, developing countries receive from the World Health Organization, and how important the funding from the United States government means to the world at this time. Now, there has been trust that we are going to withdraw these funds. We are no longer going to be a part of World Health Organization's funding, judging by the fact that there are some countries, especially like China, that contribute relatively less to the United States. Don't forget, this has been a battle between China and the United States, and countries like Russia, they have decided to stay somewhere and watch the precedent as it's going. Now, how disastrous will this be for developing countries if the United States says we are taking away our billions of dollars and we are no longer contributing to the World Health Organization?
Well, good morning once again.
Good morning.
Thanks for having me. Now, going by the latest development from the World Health Organization towards this current issue that the United States have just raised concerning funding towards the World Health Organization. Like you said, majorly, U.S. has been the major donor of funding of the World Health Organization. Now, going back to 2024, if I'm right, just like what happened here in Nigeria during the handing over of the new government, the incoming government said there is no place for, how do I call it now, the subsidy in this new government, mainly because it wasn't included in the last administration's budget. Now, according to Tedros, the World Health Organization chairman, he said the U.S. up to date are still holding back the funding for 2024, which means under Biden, President Biden, nothing has been funded to the World Health Organization
in 2024.
In 2024, the funding still stays out.
With the American state government.
Yes, it is still being withheld. It has not been funded. They have not released their fund. Yeah. Now, enter Trump. Now, with all these trade tariffs going on left and right, we should have been expecting this. The World Health Organization, the United Nations, and every other institutions in the world should have been expecting this. Now, in came Trump now. Now, Trump is saying, see, I am no longer funding. All these writings have been on the wall since we've not been seeing it, concerning the climate change and everything. They are funded towards the climate change. Everything seems to be withdrawn right before our noses, even before the entrance of Trump. Now, Trump is saying, we are no longer funding the World Health Organization. Now, the negative impact of this is the workforce of the World Health Organization will reduce drastically in any place around the world. Now, if there are conflicts in the world and we have splinter groups coming up with different kind of conflicts in the world, definitely there will be a ton of diseases and all these things coming up over there. How does the United Nations or the World Health Organizations now, how do they now manage it? With their funding being cut off, that means there will be reduced capital when it comes to woman employees, it will reduce, definitely. So a lot of negativity is going to come into place, and it's going to affect not only the World Health Organization, but every other country that is a signatory to the United Nations.
Now, very quickly, let me ask you this, Uzon, please. Even United States has a lot of debt. Talking about the most indebted country around the world, we have about 5 of them, United States being the very first one with the highest total national debt. We also have a country like Japan, we have countries like Lebanon, and then you begin to wonder that, you know, it's not like the United States, economically, they are not invincible. They also have their own personal issues. And then their debt is around 28.96 trillion naira by the public, debt held by the public. And then they have about intergovernmental holdings of 7.2 trillion million dollars. This marks an increase of $1.61 trillion over the past year, averaging a daily rise of about 4.42 billion. Meaning that even the United States, they have, their own fair share of troubles when it comes to economy. But then, how they have been able to stay afloat even with all the debt is one thing that remains a secret, maybe a secret to some other world leaders. What exactly are they doing wrong and they are doing right that makes them so invincible? And then, I want to know, are they trying to cut back on funding just to make sure that they sustain a stable economy, even for the United States of America?
Now, let's take a look at this scenario. You talked about they to be indebted. Now, are they trying to cut back to get aloof, to stay aloof? Now, even if they are indebted, does it look like they are indebted? It's a matter of knowing your priorities, setting your priorities when it comes to national budgeting. Now, we are indebted to a lot of things, to a lot of other countries. But the little funds that we have, how good are we going to make of it when it comes to the American populace itself? Are we going to have this at our beck and call and still distribute it to the becking other outside world or outside nations? Why don't we look inward and take care of our own people? Let us go by our own budget. Do you understand what I'm saying? Let us go by our budget. Of course, we are indebted, but the little funding that we have, now Trump has raised tariffs. The little money that we are trying to gather in, how well are we making use of it? Now, let me bring this into play. Just last week, the NBA, the Nigeria Bar Association, were talking now, we are saying there's an amount of 300 billion naira.
300 million naira. They got this as a gift from the River State
governor.
From
the River State governor.
They claim it was a gift from the River State government.
Yes, it was a gift, yes. Does it now seem that River State doesn't have anything to do with financially with revenue? That they have to give 300 trillion naira to NBA, an organization, for his dinner, for his week, for his law week. What about every other facilities in every other thing that has to be put in place in River State? As River State turned to the United States of America, that they are so rich
that they can part with 300 million
now
naira.
To part with 300 trillion naira. And we are talking about health issues there.
Health facilities, conditions.
In the rural areas, in the urban areas and everything. What is their scorecard?
So somehow, do you think that this is actually a politically motivated move from the president, saying that, from what he said, nothing more than that the WHO is nothing more than a corrupt globalist scam, which disgracefully covered the tracks of the Chinese Communist Party. You know, it feels like it's this war between the US and China is still standing, but away from that, he wanted to pull away as far back as 2020. So is this politically motivated, or are we actually going to follow or toe the path of the president saying that the WHO is actually corrupt?
Using the word corrupt will go a long way. I don't want to dabble into some things that are like opening can of worms here. Now, if you remember way back in 2020 or 2019, where we have the case of COVID-19.
Yeah.
COVID-19 actually emanated from where? From China. But it is up to the World Health Organization to come up with funds to countries to battle COVID-19, which some of the camps came here to Nigeria, and some of them were actually
across the African
we don't know
continent.
how it was spent or how it was disbursed. Now, I wouldn't want to go into the area of biological weaponry. Coming up with biological, that theory, that conspiracy theory. But this thing actually came in from China. And the World Health Organization have to be there to curb it with whose funds. If we are saying, yes, it is political motivated, that China, they are covering up for China's lapses. Nobody is talking about this thing coming out from China, why it was developed. Was it actually a real disease? Or a real virus? Was it generated? Nobody is looking into that. So there's another tone of we having a Cold War between the two countries now, which actually affects mostly the higher populace of Europe. Remember the Italian president coming out to say, please help us during the COVID-19. Now, going by World Health Organizations, if the United States should pull out now, Europe has its own share of problems. Number one, talking about immigration, talking about health issues, talking about security because of this Schengen agreement. People cross the border. So, how much does Europe even contribute to the World Health Organization? So these things, when Trump says he's looking at it from this point of view, let us give it a little bit of a thought that could it be? But now he's looking inwards. Let me take care of my people before I look outwards. We are indebted too. But how do we manage our resources? Like I said, the example of River State. You are still trying to build a House of Assembly that you pull down, yet you are giving out, you are dishing out such a tidy sum to the NBA. For what? Are the MBAs, the members of the NBA coming from Pluto or Venus or Uranus or for Mars, that amount has to be accrued to them for that week to celebrate their week.
Now, to buttress that, we spoke about the United States of America contributing a sum of over $500 million US on a yearly basis to the World Health Organization. Now, you asked the question that how much does the European countries contribute to the World Health Organization on a yearly basis? I have this, voluntary contributions in the year between 2022 and 2023 period, the EU provided approximately $414 million in voluntary contributions to the World Health Organization. So that's the European Union, not just a country.
Not
European Union.
Now you said voluntarily. They did it voluntarily.
Okay.
So is US mandated to do it every year, while some countries come together to do it voluntarily?
So now it has to be voluntary for the United States too.
It can be voluntary, or we are not even giving it to you anymore. So now
you mean that it's a good idea that the United States says, look, we are not spending our money on the World Health Organization anymore?
I think if they do that, it will teach all other countries to look inward, especially here in Africa and in Nigeria, where we misplace our priorities. Now, concerning health now we know that since funding is not tight and streamed, it is not streamlined, we'll be having a little coming in from the World Health Organization. Why don't we try and look inwards to develop our own health sector? There are so many research centers here, especially here in Ibadan. When it comes to the teaching hospital that we have,
are they being funded?
That's where I'm going.
Or are they being underfunded?
Now, sometimes 2 years ago, last year or 2 years ago, I was at that teaching hospital here. And I looked at a lot of buildings that were being built, while some of them were just kept there, built to an average level, left there. Why didn't they just finish them off? Finish them up, equip them, and start research. We can actually come up with something. That means if any pandemic or anything should happen now, we are still looking forward to up to World Health Organization to do what? To fund us with various vaccines, various this, various that. Why don't we look inwards? Now, a lot is happening there. You can imagine what is the role of the Ministry of Health, Federal Ministry of Health now, concerning that particular teaching hospital. They have a CMD there, the Chief Medical Director. And late last year, the power company here in Nigeria disconnected from grid, saying or coming up to say that they owe over 800 million naira.
And at a point there was no water.
Yeah, nothing. Now, don't they generate funds?
Are you saying they should look inward by generating funds inward?
Don't they generate funds? Of course, they generate funds. Okay,
where are the money going?
Okay, all the patients there, are they being treated on pro bono?
You mean they are receiving monies? They should spend those monies on facilities.
Are you saying that?
Can't they? Okay, don't they have the initiative that this is what we need to do?
Are you saying there's something shady going on in there?
This hospital.
I'm not saying shady, but that is lack of initiative on the part of the CMD and the part of some staff and management of that place.
Can what they actually generate there be able to cover some of the expenses?
Is it sufficient?
It will, if it's well managed.
If it is well managed.
Yes. Now, there are so many research centers there.
Which brings us back to some of the questions where you get to these hospitals and you are given prescriptions and there are no drugs in these hospitals. Sometimes they tell you that they buy some of these things with the money they make from the hospital, or say government does not actually supply drugs and all these things to them.
Government not supplying drugs. That is part of what we are saying. What is the job or the role of the ministry or the Federal Ministry of Health? Now, if you go to that, just quickly, going back to that same place that we mentioned, if you need to buy some drugs, they'll tell you, go outside to buy it. Now, this person you are referring outside, where does he get his own supplies?
Well, that's a question for the CMD to answer. Maybe one of these days we'll bring him on board to talk about this same topic, and then you will be there to say these things to him.
Okay.
All right, away from there, we take stories from the pages of the newspaper this morning, and then it's a very big blow for the PDP in Delta State yesterday, as they suffered one big blow as APC captured Delta yesterday. Okowa was, ex-governor of Delta State. His predecessor, Sheriff, also, and every structure of the PDP,
commissioners and everyone
in that particular state collapsed into the APC. Your take on this? And then there's a statement by an elder statesman, Chief Bodejo, saying they are being coerced to do this. Are they being coerced, or they are doing this on their own?
Coercion.
Is there anything like coercion in this?
That's what I want to look into. The idea of coercion. Where does it come from? Okowa backing out. If you remember, was the running mate to Atiku.
Atiku Abubakar.
Now, but him now saying, look, I'm no longer going with you guys. The Bible says can two work together unless they agree. Now they are not agreeing anymore. Let us share the loot and let us go. Everybody has now taken sides. Like I said sometimes ago, that this is the time for them to make alliances. This is the right time for them to make alliances. If you are caught in the cold, you have yourself to be blamed for it. Now, you still want to be relevant in the scheme of things. It is not time for you to align with whoever has the power, the whims of power at hand. There's clearly some writing or the world that PDP has an internal cracks that is clear to every one of them. and they don't want to go down with that.
So do you think the country is gradually drifting into a one-party state?
No, it's not that. It's not drifting into a one-party state.
Because with what we're seeing, even Atiku said sometime last week that he's going to fly on any platform. Any
platform means there are still platforms he can fly on.
Okay.
We are still looking at the idea of coalition anyway.
With the SDP.
Is it even are
SDP, good, CPC, every one of them.
Is that going to be a strong opposition?
They can make it stronger.
By doing what exactly?
Ideologies, putting the ideologies together, forgetting whatever it is that they stand for.
Do Nigerian politicians believe in ideologies?
We've talked about that a number of times that they do, but this time around they can just come up with one. One general one going to be that will form their nucleus. That will form their nucleus.
They are the same set of people. They have been in the corridor of power before.
Right.
Now, don't say, okay, I've known you for some time. Can't we just decide to agree on one particular point?
The same way they said in 2011. The same way they said in 2011. There was this assertion that President Muhammadu Buhari was coming on board at the time. General Muhammadu Buhari at the time was coming on board to right his wrongs and then put Nigeria where it is meant to be. And for 8 years, this is where we are. We are still here.
They can still tell us the same old thing and can still believe that if they can do it,
and Nigeria wiser.
If they can do it
Nigeria wiser now.
If they can do it convincingly.
Are Nigerians wiser now? That's the question.
Talking about being wiser or not, I told you, they are the puppeteers. They know what to do. See, when it comes to electioneering in Nigeria, the actual people that goes out and vote, they don't even know their right from their left. What they believe in is in the names that they hear. Tell them,
don't vote in Nigeria.
Rarely do you have most elites going out to vote. Most of us believe that the elections will be marred by violence, by this, by that, and we don't want to go out. And these people that are ready to go out don't even know their right from their left. All they want is, Mr. Jagba to be there. I heard that Mr. Jagba is going to do us, is going to do this, going to do that. But did you actually sit down to ask Mr. Jagba that these policies, are they going to work?
Now let's go back to the cross-carpeting that happened in Delta State yesterday. Uzoms, I'm very sorry about that. I want to take this before he leaves that topic. As of April 2025, former Delta State Governor Ifeanyi Okowa is under investigation by the Nigeria's Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, EFCC, for alleged diversion of approximately 1.3 trillion naira for the 13% oil derivation funds allocated to Delta State during his tenure from 2015 to 2023. Now, he was arrested and detained in April 2025, November 4, 2024, Okowa was arrested in Port Harcourt after responding to an EFCC investigation. He was detained for questioning regarding the alleged misappropriation of the derivation funds. Now, are we saying that the moment you join the APC or any ruling party in Nigeria, all your sins are forgiven? Nobody talks about it anymore. It is swept under the carpet.
This is my own point of view. Whether as a sitting governor, you have an indictment under the FCC or ICPC or whatever. Whether you join, you now cross-carpet to the ruling party or you don't. Has any governor ever been indicted, any ex-governor ever been elected, whether cross-carpeting to the ruling party or not? Has there ever been anyone? All we've been saying is playing to the galleries. EFCC coming after them, left and right, center, throwing jibes. Has there ever been one convicted and have they ever been sent to the prisons or wherever?
So you're saying it's business as usual?
It's business as usual. Whether it's under investigation or not, whether it cross-carpeted or not, has the EFCC ever been able to convict anybody? Even our courts, our ex-governors.
You know,
the idea of cross-carpeting now is general.
We have had times when governors, we have had 2 governors, which I can remember vividly, that were convicted in Nigeria. James Ibori did Delta State, 1999 to 2007.
In Nigeria or in the UK?
He was eventually indicted and then he went to jail. All he did has a lot to do with what he did in Nigeria at the time. And then away from there, Joshua Darie of Plateau State, between 1999 and 2007, he was governor, and then eventually he was convicted, indicted and convicted. Then you have Jolly Yame of Taraba State, 1999 to 2007. He also had the same issue. Diepre Alamesia of Bayelsa State also faced the same consequences. Lucky Igbinedion of Edo State, 1999 to 2007. He was convicted in 2008.
Let me remind you.
For embezzling 25 billion naira, sentenced to 6 months in prison. And now the problem now is, before you say that, very quickly, because you are going to leave this topic, after they have been convicted, you realize the fact that what they did and the conviction they get is more or less like a paperweight. It doesn't add up. At all. They don't really measure up to what actually happened. 25 billion naira and he got just 6 months in jail. And then we have these usual statements we use in Nigeria, plea bargain. Oh, I have stolen 25 billion. I will give you 5 billion. But I don't know where the remaining 20 billion is. Please do me, Jeje.
During the period that these people were indicted and convicted, the strong will, I mean, the political will of the man in power then was quite political. Was so political that it tends to teach you a lesson for 1 or 2 things. Apart from those convictions for those money and those funds being embezzled, being spent, being squandered, there are some other things that are having underlying issues, that added up as underlying issues. Alamisa, for instance, if you remember that it was under the Obasanjo's regime. Some of them, a whole lot of them were under the Obasanjo regime. Any other one, any other regime?
Are you saying Obasanjo's administration was rigged with corruption?
It wasn't rigged with corruption. But I can say that Obasanjo has this will, this strong will of...
Are you saying he looked away?
He didn't look the way.
Are you saying
he actually enforced? He actually enforced. Now, there's a saying now that if you join the APC, your sins will be forgiven. But under Obasanjo, I don't think their sins were forgiven. He make sure he sort them out and everything fall into due course. And they were convicted, like you said. But am I now trying to, or are we now looking at a strong-willed leader way back then concerning these ones?
There are some other people who had cases with the FCC.
You said?
Okay, you're saying the Obasanjo's administration was better than the current one?
And you know, way back then, we believed that the FCC served as a watchdog under him. But they performed their duties very well way back.
They created the FCC,
yes,
the ICPC.
And, the ICPC. And they performed duly, diligently. But what about now? Now we have a...
Are you saying the FCC is weaker now than it used to be?
I think, yes, it is. They are much
weaker
now.
Toothless dogs now.
Yes, now. That's what they are.
So how can we come out of this?
Come out of this? That we now find ourselves.
Right, because you talked about, when you talked about voting, you said some of the elites do not actually go to vote. There's people that just hear all about it. It doesn't mean that our voting system is not even credible
in Nigeria, we still believe in the kind of electioneering that we have. If you don't go to the politician's house to beg for this, to beg, see, all these people have been kept on leash. That is why the economy has not actually improved to a considerable extent, that people can be financially free. And when they are not financially free, they are still tied to the whims and caprices of all these politicians. Where you see them thronging at the gates of the politicians, at their mansions, to collect handouts, to do this, to do that. Definitely, those are the people that will vote, not you and me, that would care about. We are comfortable.
We have to go this morning.
Okay.
Thank you for joining us in the studio.
Thank you once again.
He is an aviation instructor and expert. He is also a public affairs analyst. for coming.
Thank you.
That takes us to the next segment on the show this morning. We now link up with our reporters out there for traffic reports this morning.
to the traffic light, it is really regulating the movement around here, allowing everybody to get to their destination smoothly and freely. And that is it. Good morning, Ibadan, and good morning to you at the studio. Away from my colleague at Bodija Market, we are currently live at Agodi Gate, where movement here is going smoothly and freely. And thanks to the traffic light, it is really regulating the movement around here, allowing everybody to get to their destination smoothly and freely. And that is it around here at Agodi Gate this morning. And
welcome back from that short break. That was traffic report by Enola Salvador and the crew members Sherufomi also out there giving us latest updates as regards traffic in the ancient city of Ibadan this morning. We now head straight to our sport desk as Boluwaji Ogumola is waiting to give us the latest updates. Good morning to you, Boluwaji.
Good morning, Samson, and good morning, Nigerians. It's a lovely Thursday morning.
I bet there's a lot to talk about in the EPL, judging about the game that were played yesterday, and of course, what impact it has on Liverpool winning their 20th EPL title right there in England.
It was indeed a keenly contested game yesterday between Arsenal and, of course, Crystal Palace. And just like we said here yesterday, we said that the game will really impact Liverpool's, title, winning their 20th title and equaling Manchester United's record. And yesterday, it proved just that 2-2 the game ended, and Liverpool fans at home were just celebrating already because they are just 1 point
almost
away.
There.
Yeah, almost there. Just 1 point away from winning, their number 20, yes, and equaling Manchester United's record. So all of these things are connected one way or the other. I'm mentioning Arsenal here, I'm mentioning Liverpool, I'm mentioning Manchester United as well.
Judging by the rivalry between Liverpool and Manchester United, I know it's going to be a big deal right there in England right now.
Absolutely, it is indeed a big deal right now in England. And of course, it will get a whole lot more interesting at the weekend because Liverpool will host Tottenham Hotspur at the weekend. And just a point is what they need at Anfield for them to be crowned, of course, champions once again. They've done so well for themselves. And one thing that I think they did pretty well this season is the fact that they've been able to keep the bulk of the team together. And their success so far has also helped redefine their strategy going forward. And here is what I mean by that. Before the start of the season, Mohamed Salah felt, well, I've done enough. At the end of the season, I think I should go. But then, when the success started coming in and discovered that we might just win our 20th title, why do I leave? Maybe one more season. Maybe 2 more seasons.
All right, do your thing, Boluwaji.
And Virgil van Dijk also did the same.
He also renewed his contract. That's a very big news for Liverpool. Exactly. You can do your thing, Boluwaji.
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Samson. Well, once again, good morning. My name is Boluwaji Ogumola. Let's talk sports. Let's kickstart from the Nigerian Nigerian Female Football League this morning, where matches were played yesterday in the 2 leagues. Well, let me inform you that first off, we had Nasarawa Amazons. They took on Edo Queens, and they inflicted Edo Queens with their first defeat of the season. Of course, Nasarawa Amazon won that game by a single goal against Edo Queens. Confluence Queens as well were 1-0 better than Ekiti Queens, while Atlant Football Club lost away at Dana's Ladies. The game between Abia Angels and Raymond Stars Ladies was not played yesterday. Let's go to Group B, where matches were also played. But Yosai Queens continued their impressive run in Group B with another victory. They are still unbeaten in Group B as we speak. 1-0 that game ended. Adama Queens forced Benue Queens to 2-2-0 draw, while Nigeriatos won surprisingly away from home in Delta yesterday. They won 2-0 to keep alive their hopes of making the Super 6. And Ibom Angels were 1-0 better than FC Robo Queens. That's it as regards matches played in the Nigerian Female Football League yesterday. We're back tomorrow to take a look at its implication once the game with Remo Stars ladies is concluded. But then, let's head straight to Cairo this morning, where Nigeria under-20 national team, the Flamingos, yesterday intensified training ahead of the start of their AFCON. And then the fixtures, their first game is against Tunisia next week. Now, the training session began at about 6 p.m. local time, not about 5 p.m. Nigerian time, and it lasted for 90 minutes. And of course, the coach of the side was indeed in the middle of the entire training, and ensure that they dot their I's and cross their T's. Don't forget, a few days ago, they defeated their counterparts from Egypt. And understand that they have one more friendly game before the start of the tournament. Don't forget, we're in the same group with Pauses, Tunisia, Morocco, and Kenya in that particular group. We wish the Flying Eagles all the very best as they continue preparations ahead of this year's Under-20 Africa Cup of Nations. All in the same vein, the Under-17 women's team of Nigeria, the Flamingos, yesterday arrived in Algeria ahead of their crucial second leg qualifiers against their Algerian counterparts. The Flamingos head into this match with a commanding 4-0 advantage from the first leg played last weekend. The team touched down in Builder yesterday afternoon and proceeded straight to the hotel to settle ahead of the decisive fixture holding tomorrow. Of course, after that very fantastic victory, last weekend, 4-0, the job is simple. Just seal the win. Now, to reach this stage, Nigeria overcame South Africa, Botswana, while Algeria advanced when they defeated their counterparts from Tunisia. It's all to play for the Flamingos. They've always turned up for Nigeria, and we trust that they will seal the job. They will seal qualification later on tomorrow. Don't forget, the eventual winner on aggregate will book one of the 5 available tickets to this year's Under-17 World Cup holding in Morocco this very year. From there, let's cross to the world of basketball and talking about the ladies this morning. Nigeria's senior women's basketball team, the D Tigress, has been drawn in Group D of the 2025 FIBA Women's Afro-Basket. They are in the same group alongside Mozambique and Rwanda, as they prepare to defend their continental crown for a 5th consecutive time. Now, the draw held ahead of the tournament built to take place later this year has placed the reigning champions in what many consider in a competitive group, with some Mozambique and Rwanda showing mark of improvement in recent years. And there you have, of course, the groupings already on your screen as far as the Afro-Basket is concerned. Of course, we have Côte d'Ivoire, Nigeria, Senegal, and Mali in Port 1. That's the port, actually, but then they were drawn against the likes of Mozambique and Rwanda. In Group A, we have Ivory Coast, Egypt, and Angola. In Group B, Mali, Cameroon, and South Sudan. In Group C, we have Senegal, Guinea, and Uganda. And in Group D, Nigeria, Mozambique, and Rwanda. What you have on your screen was the pot going into the draws held yesterday. And going to another interesting competition currently going on in Ivory Coast, and that's the IHF Handball Zone 3 competition in Ivory Coast. Yesterday, it was semi-final day for the Under-18 and the Under-20 women's team of Nigeria. Let's start with Nigeria. The results we saw yesterday, as you saw on your screen earlier. Yes, as you saw on your screen earlier. There you have it on the screen. Nigeria, yesterday, in the Under-18 category, defeated their counterpart from Benin Republic 39-29 points to book a place in the finals. For the Under-20 junior boys, Nigeria, unfortunately, lost to Burkina Faso 28-25 points to miss out in a place in the finals. Let's take a look at the final fixtures to look forward to later on today. In the Under-18, we would have the 3rd place game between Benin Republic and Burkina Faso, and then the final of the Under-18 between Côte d'Ivoire and the Nigerian national team. But for the under-20 competition, third place game is between Benin Republic and Nigeria, and that's courtesy of Nigeria's loss yesterday. Côte d'Ivoire, on their own side, will take on Burkina Faso in the final of the under-20 competition. Well, we wish them all the very best. Straight to athletics this morning, where with the 2025 World Athletics Championship fast approaching, the Athletic Federation of Nigeria has officially announced that its final squad for the competition. Following the release of a provisional list in recent weeks, the AFN has now trimmed the roster down to a final group of 24 athletes. Top stars such as Tobiloba Amoson, Favour Ofili, and Favour Ashe, headline the team. Nigeria is set to compete in 4 of the 6 relay events, with the goal of securing automatic qualification for the 2025 World Athletics Championship in Tokyo, Japan. The relay event will be held in Ganzhou, serving as qualifying competition for the Tokyo Championship. And on your screen, you can see the players already invited for our relay team. Men's 4x100, Alaba Akintola, Favour Ashe, Clinton Anuba, Olaoye is also there, Udodi and Ushekiri Ishorishi. Well, for the mixed 4x100, we have Alaba Akintola, Favour Ashe, Favour Ofili, Rosemary Chukuma, Success Umokoro, and Udodi Omuzurike. For the women's 4x100, we have Favour Ofili. Justin Oyago Boban is also in the team. Obi Jennifer, Rosemary Chukuma, Success Umokoro, and Tobiloba Amuson. For the mixed 4x400 meters, we have Chidi Okezie, Ifeanyi Ojeli. All of these athletes are part of our relay team. Quick one to the world of basketball. NBA playoffs. We witnessed 3 matches yesterday. 3 interesting ones, I must tell you. As Jalen Green dropped 38 points with 8 triples to help his team, Houston Rockets, even the series with the Golden State Warriors following their win yesterday, 109-94-point victory in Game 2 to tie the series 1-all. In the second game of the day, Cleveland Cavaliers took their lead to 2-0 yesterday with 121-112-point victory over the Miami Heat to take a 2-0 series lead. And in the third game of the day, the Boston Celtics are now 2-0 up against the Orlando Magic, courtesy of their 109-100 points victory over the Magic yesterday. Well, there you have it. The 3 games that we saw earlier today, and of course we'll keep our fingers crossed and see how things pan out from there. Let's cross over to leagues across Europe and take a look at what happened in Europe, in European League yesterday as regards Premier League games, especially the one that concerns many Premier League football fans, especially Liverpool fans. Yesterday, Arsenal and Crystal Palace played out a 2-2 draw to move Liverpool even further to their 20th Premier League title, while a draw for Liverpool against Tottenham at the weekend will secure them the Premier League title. While in Spain yesterday, Athletic Bilbao defeated Las Palmas by a single goal. Real Madrid defeated, won yesterday by a single goal against Getafe. And of course, in Italian Serie A, here are the results. Juventus lost to Parma by a single goal. And in the Coppa Italia yesterday, AC Milan trashed their neighbors, Inter Milan, by 3-0. And we're waiting for the winner of the game between Empoli and Bologna later today to know those who will compete in the finals of the Coppa Italia. Well, that's sports this morning. Back to Samson for our concluding part of Daybreak.
All right, thank you, Boluwaji, for joining us in the studio this morning. This brings us to that segment where we draw the curtains on today's edition of Daybreak Live on Dominion Television. We do hope that you know this. The future depends on what you do today. That's according to Mahatma Gandhi. Make the day count. Samson Balogun is manning. Until next time, that we'll be meeting again. Keep being good, keep being safe, and keep being nice out there. Bye for now.
And remember, the journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Take that step today. I am Uzam Sokejikwu. Stay blessed. We'll see you tomorrow for the TGIF edition of Daybreak Live.